Welcome back. Throughout this war, we've been assessing the various motives of the United States, Israel, and Iran, and Curt Mills has been one of the experts highly critical of Netanyahu and suggesting that there may be a divergence between the goals of the United States and the goals of Israel. Joining us now, Executive Director of the American Conservative magazine, Curt Mills. Curt, I want to start with the regime change post that we got out of President Trump. We got some clarification from the White House on that. It is apparently a call to the people of Iran to manage their own regime change. Do you see regime change currently as a U.S. goal?
Unclear. Both the Vice President and the Secretary of State messaged against it. But this operation was done in coordination, or at least with the permission structure of Washington vis-a-vis the Israelis. And of course, the Israelis, certainly the Netanyahu administration, regime change is all but the open declared policy. His own defense minister last week said that Khamenei must go. So yeah, I think it's regime change light. I think the events of the last few hours, though, indicate that Trump is trying to pull back from the brink. He's trying to check the excesses of the Netanyahu administration. And then additionally, so much of this is just telegraphed and open source. Perhaps the most influential lobbyist for this entire effort, the Fox News host Mark Levin, is already losing his mind that Trump might do a deal with the actual current government of Iran, and that is the one, like it or not, in Tehran.
Israel is continuing their bombing campaign as President Trump, in his most recent social media post, appears to be trying to coax Israel back to reasonableness. Do you believe Israel will continue bombing until the Ayatollah is dead?
Unclear. I think the messaging from Jerusalem is that they are interested in a shorter war, although they have said literally the contradictory message within the last 24 hours. I think they are reading the domestic political environment in the U.S. very carefully. And I think they are also watching, frankly, programs like this and the intra-MAGA dispute over this. And they see just very little appetite for, essentially an insane regime change escapade in the Middle East. Additionally, U.S. goals and Israeli goals just don't naturally align. If Israel overthrows the government in Iran and is replaced by chaos, that's preferable for Israel. If that happens for the U.S. side, that's not preferable for the United States. It's the same playbook from Iraq. Israel, Netanyahu is certainly glad that Saddam Hussein is gone. Not clear the United States has really effectively benefited from it.
And that, I think, is where people like Mark Levin are trying to make their case. They're trying to make the case that Israel's goals and America's goals are perfectly aligned, and that if the United States merely gives Israel permission to do whatever they want, that ultimately that inures to our benefit. But my theory is that Israel actually wants chaos as an end state in Iran to distract from and disrupt rising capital markets in the Middle East. Why do you think Israel wants chaos in Iran?
They obviously fear the Muslim world because they're leading an occupation in Gaza and the West Bank. And so as long as that occurs, an organized Muslim state, I mean, first of all, in the 70s and 80s, it was basically pan-Arabism, sort of the secular socialist governments in Syria, Iraq, Egypt before that. That was the threat. And then it sort of shifted to the more political Islam variant, most famously exhibited by the Iranians. The Israelis have sought to flatten all of these states. Not everybody in Israel, but I mean, it has been a fairly consistent hallmark of Israeli statecraft to do that. And Netanyahu is just taking it to a zenith. He's taking it to a zenith that's never been seen before because he's roped it into his own political security. If he was replaced tomorrow, the most likely successor would be Naftali Bennett, who is a conservative hardliner who would very likely continue the war in some fashion, the war in Gaza. But he wouldn't be likely opening up new fronts because he's going to be indicted in a day or to avoid a bad story in the tabloids. That is what the Netanyahu administration does. And that is a hallmark of his political career. It's a closed case. The man has been involved in Israeli and American life in a major way for over 30 years.
You made mention earlier about how this is playing out in conservative media in very different ways. And I've taken note of the fact that a lot of the podcast bros who were central to President Trump's coalition, they've been very negative about any U.S. engagement here. People like Theo Vaughn, Sean Ryan, and then at the same time on Fox News, it is just, you literally could take the scripts from 2003 and just change Iran and Iraq and put the same exact things in the teleprompter and have the same type of advocacy. Where do you think we go from here as a movement, Curt? Do you think that there is going to be this audience thirst for more juicing war, or do you think that more of MAGA is reverted back to realism as a foreign policy organizing principle?
I think the realists have the upper hand. I mean, I think it's almost nigh inevitable. I mean, so the reality is that, and this has been messaged elsewhere, that this has been effectively, and again, due respect to anyone who dissents from this who's in that generation, but it has been a boomer war. And it was the messaging has been driven by basically establishment conservative organs, Con Inc. Here in Washington, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, Rupert Murdoch's Fox News arm, as well as New York Post. And, that's not to discount it. It has institutional power, but I don't think it has really creative purchase within, basically every succeeding generation after the 1960s. People don't buy it anymore. The millennial generation was reared on a rock. George W. Bush's name is mud for the millennial generation. That's how we got Obama. And then the younger ones have, basically don't remember 9/11 and have only remember a country for the 21st century that has been a deeply unhappy one, which is, very foreign, I think, to older Americans. But it is the cast of mind for basically people under 45. And demographics are destiny. Eventually,
Sure.
presumably these people will come into leadership, and that will set the agenda. So I don't mean to, rest on my laurels here, but I think this is a potential dead cat bounce of neoconservatism, not a sign of its invincibility.
Curt Mills, Executive Director of the American Conservative, thanks as always for coming on and sharing your insights and analysis.